At 18, I learned my parents used my college fund for my sister's future, while telling me I wasn't worth it, so I built my own life without them. When I was 18, I found out my college fund had been wiped out to pay for my sister's dream wedding in Santorini. But it wasn't the money that crushed me. It was the way my mom laughed when I confronted her about it, like I just told her I wanted to be an astronaut or a rock star. "Oh, come on, Ethan." She chuckled, not even looking up from her tablet. "You're not exactly Harvard material." My name's Ethan. I'm 22 now, but I still remember every word of that conversation like it was tattooed behind my eyes. I grew up in a middle-class family, 2 parents, 1 older sister named Nicole, and a golden retriever named Bailey, who honestly treated me better than most humans did. From the outside, we looked like your average suburban family, the kind you see on holiday cards. Matching sweaters, polite, smiles a backyard with a swing set. But behind all that, there was a quiet hierarchy in our house. Nicole was the queen bee. I was the bench warmer no one remembered to pass the ball to. Nicole was everything my parents wanted in a child. Charismatic, photogenic, ambitious in the way that made for good Facebook posts. Prom queen, student council president, early admission to a small liberal arts college with an absurd tuition bill. My parents used to beam when they talked about her. "She's going places," Dad would say, his eyes lighting up like he was talking about the next president. When it came to me, their tone changed. Ethan's, "Well, he's a good kid." That was always the line, a good kid. The kind of phrase people use when they don't know what else to say. But I didn't resent Nicole at first. I figured maybe I just hadn't found my thing yet. I was decent in school, especially in math, and I spent my free time fixing up old electronics in the garage. I wasn't flashy, but I had plans, big ones. I'd been dreaming of going to Georgia Tech since I was 15. I spent 2 years researching programs, building my GPA, applying for scholarships. I'd even gotten accepted into a pre-ol summer program that year and had a whole spreadsheet tracking deadlines, tuition costs, and dorm essentials. I was ready, or I thought I was. The thing is, my parents had always promised us both college savings, not massive trust funds or anything, but they made it clear from the time we were kids. If we got into a good school, they'd help us get there. I didn't question it. Every birthday card from Grandma came with a $50 check marked for the college fund. My part-time jobs through high school, every paycheck I saved went into that same account. I believed in that account. It wasn't just money, it was my future. So when Nicole got engaged right after graduating, college yes, fresh out, no job yet, no real-world experience, and announced she wanted a destination wedding because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, I didn't think much of it. Sure, it sounded expensive. Sure, Mom was suddenly spending hours scrolling through wedding Pinterest boards, but I figured they had savings. Or maybe Nicole's fiancé Jason had wealthy parents. He looked like the type tall, polished, always wore loafers without socks. I didn't realize what had really happened until a week before my high school graduation. It was supposed to be a big day. I'd just gotten my acceptance letter from Georgia Tech and was floating on a cloud. I walked into the kitchen waving the envelope like a trophy. Dad was reading the paper. Mom was mixing something in a bowl. Nicole was on speakerphone with someone, probably her wedding planner. I said it out loud, beaming. I got in full acceptance. No one looked up. I remember clearing my throat and saying it again a little louder. Nicole rolled her eyes. "Ethan, can you keep it down? I'm on a call about the welcome brunch in Mykonos." "Mykonos." I blinked. "I thought your wedding was in Santorini." She shrugged like it didn't matter. "We're doing both. It's all part of the experience." I laughed, awkward, confused. "Wait, what? That sounds insane. Isn't that crazy expensive?" Nicole smiled like a cat with cream. "Oh, it's taken care of." That's when I turned to my mom, who finally stopped stirring the batter. "Wait, what does that mean? You guys didn't use my college savings for this, right?" Dad rustled the paper. Mom looked at me with that placating tone she used whenever she didn't want to explain herself. "We had to move some things around." "Sweetheart," she said lightly, "Nicole's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event." I just stood there frozen. "You mean my college fund? You can always take out loans," Mom said, like she was talking about borrowing sugar from a neighbor. "Plenty of kids do. But I've been saving for that since I was 13. Mom shrugged. "And now you're helping your sister start her life. That's what family does." Then she laughed. That dry, dismissive laugh. "Besides, you're not exactly Harvard material." I didn't say anything after that. I just walked out of the room, climbed the stairs, and sat in my room staring at the acceptance letter I'd once been so proud of. I don't remember how long I sat there. Hours, maybe? Bailey patted in at one point and put his head on my knee like he knew. That night, I lay awake replaying every birthday, every job shift, every weekend I'd skipped hanging out with friends because I was saving for something that apparently didn't belong to me anymore. My parents didn't even act like it was a betrayal. They acted like it was obvious, like Nicole's dream wedding mattered more than anything I'd ever wanted. I didn't go to my graduation dinner. Nicole texted me a selfie from a bridal boutique with 3 dress options and wrote, "Which one makes me look like a goddess?" I never responded. The worst part wasn't even the theft of it all. It was the casual cruelty. The way they dismissed me like I was just the spare. After that, everything changed. I stopped trusting them. I stopped believing in family first nonsense. I stopped hoping for their approval. But I didn't give up. I took out the loans. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I sold my vintage game collection online. I worked 3 jobs through freshman year, tutoring math, fixing computers, even doing part-time delivery driving at night. I didn't tell them anything. They didn't ask. Nicole's wedding was a week before my first day of classes. I didn't go. Instead, I moved into my dorm with a single duffel bag and a second-hand laptop. And I promised myself something. I would never let them take anything from me again. But what I didn't expect, what blindsided me completely, was that 4 years later, after everything they'd done, they'd come back not with an apology, but with a favor. That's when everything started to unravel. And that's when I realized they hadn't changed. They never would. And this time, I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make them wish they'd never underestimated me. It had been almost 4 years since I last spoke to my parents beyond the occasional dry happy birthday text or stiff Christmas message. And honestly, life was better that way. Peaceful, focused. I had my head down building something real one step at a time. No one to pull me off track with drama or guilt trips. I graduated debt-heavy but determined. I landed a decent tech support job straight out of college. Nothing fancy, but it gave me just enough breathing room to start freelancing on the side, fixing systems, doing back-end dev work, troubleshooting software for small businesses. Within a year, I had a modest client list, a refurbished home office, and my first taste of independence that felt truly earned, not gifted, not inherited. Mine, Nicole, meanwhile, was all over social media. Jason and I made it to Florence, one post said, paired with an airbrush photo of her sipping wine in a flowy sundress. "Self-care week in Bali," said another. The captions never changed, either honeymooning, redecorating, or finding herself. What she never posted about, though, was a job because she didn't have one. Not really. She tried a lifestyle blog, a YouTube channel, and even launched a short-lived boutique jewelry brand that folded after 6 months. Jason, from what I could tell, worked in consulting, which I'm convinced was code for my parents' pockets. I kept my distance not out of spite, but because every time I peeked into their world, even just a scroll through Instagram, I felt that old hollow weight creeping in again, that feeling of being the afterthought. Then one afternoon, while I was eating leftover pasta at my desk between client calls, my phone lit up. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly 2 years. I let it ring out. A few minutes later, a text came through. "Mom, Ethan, we need to talk. It's about Nicole." I didn't answer. The next morning, another text. "Mom, please, just a few minutes. It's important." Against my better judgment, I called her back. She picked up on the second ring, sounding oddly breathless, like she'd been pacing. "Oh, Ethan, thank you for calling. I know things have been distant, but we need your help." "No hello? No, how have you been?" "Just we need your help." I sat back in my chair. "With what?" "It's Nicole," she said, her voice cracking with urgency. "She's getting a divorce." I blinked. "What?" "She and Jason." "It's been rough. He's been seeing someone else, some intern. He walked out a few weeks ago." I didn't say anything. "We didn't want to tell you until it was official," she went on. "But she's devastated. The house is in his name. The accounts are frozen. She has nothing, no income, no assets. She's in pieces, Ethan pieces." A pause, and the lawyer fees, they're astronomical. "You know how these things are." I still said nothing. She pushed on. "We were hoping, praying. Really, that maybe you could help just for now. Alone. Nicole's your sister. She needs us." I let the silence stretch. Every nerve in my body was on edge, tight like a bowring. I could feel something boiling under my skin, but I wasn't sure if it was rage or disbelief. "You want me," I said slowly, "to pay for Nicole's divorce." "Well, not all of it," she stammered. "But maybe just help cover the retainer. She needs representation." "Jason has a team of lawyers." I had to laugh. I couldn't help it. A sharp, bitter sound. "Mom, for years ago, you used my college savings so she could throw rose petals in the AGNC. Now you want me to bail her out. That's not fair." "Ethan, no," I snapped. "You drained the one thing I had to build a future for her wedding. Then you told me to take out loans because I wasn't Harvard material. Now you're asking me to cover her legal bills." She hesitated. "People make mistakes. We didn't know things would turn out like this. You didn't care how they'd turn out." I said, You gambled with my future, and now that she screwed up hers, you want me to fix it. Her voice hardened. We're still your family, are you? That ended the call. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd go back to pretending I didn't exist like she had for years, but I underestimated how desperate they were. 3 days later, Nicole showed up at my apartment. I opened the door and there she was. Same glossy hair, same forced smile energy, but this time wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a purse that probably cost more than my rent. She didn't even say hi, just swept past me like she owned the place and made herself at home on the couch. I know what Mom said, and I just want to be honest with you, she began. This isn't just about me. This is about showing Jason that I have support, that I have people in my corner. I closed the door and leaned against it. You didn't have people in your corner when you emptied my college account. She waved a manicured hand. Oh, come on. That was years ago. Are you still holding on to that? Yes, I said plainly. She sighed. Look, Ethan, I know we've had our differences, but this divorce is serious. I'm going to lose everything. The apartment, the car, even Bailey. I frowned. Bailey. Our Bailey. She nodded. Jason took him. Said he needed emotional support. Can you believe that I wanted to scream? Bailey had been my dog. I was the one who begged for him on my 10th birthday. But when I left for college, they decided he'd be Nicole's dog because she was around more. Now Jason had him. I clenched my jaw. That sucks. But that doesn't mean I'm going to fund your legal team. Her voice sharpened. So what? You're just going to watch your sister go down in flames? No, I'm going to watch you learn what it feels like to clean up your own mess. She stood up, then face flushed. Wow, so all that talk about rising above being the bigger person, that was just noise? I looked her in the eye. No, that's why I'm not slamming the door in your face. That's also why I am going to ask you to leave. Her jaw dropped. You're seriously kicking me out. I have a call in 5 minutes, I said, walking over to open the door. She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Good, because I wasn't the same kid who used to patch her Wi-Fi or walk her dog while she went shopping. I wasn't the quiet little brother who stayed home while she flew to islands and posted selfies with hashtags like #blessed. I was someone she didn't control anymore. A week passed, then the email started. One from my dad, one from Mom, then a long one from Nicole titled An Open Letter to My Brother. Each one more manipulative than the last. Guilt, flattery, emotional blackmail. Dad, it's time to be the man of the family. Son, Nicole needs us. Mom, don't you want to be part of something bigger than grudges, Nicole? I guess some wounds just never heal. But I thought you were better than this. They even CC'd, my aunt and uncle on one of them, trying to build a chorus of guilt. But the worst came 2 weeks later. I was getting coffee near my building when my phone buzzed a number I didn't recognize. I picked up, distracted. Hello, Ethan. This is Amanda. I'm Nicole's lawyer. I froze. Why are you calling me? I understand. There's been some disagreement about financial assistance, she said smoothly. Nicole listed you as a potential lender on her application, and we'd like to confirm whether you're contributing toward her retainer. I'm sorry. What? She indicated you had agreed to help. We just need a verbal confirmation. My heart pounded in my ears. That's a lie. Oh, the woman said, clearly caught off guard. Apologies. I'll update the record. I hung up. Then I stared at the screen. She hadn't just asked for help. She'd pretended I gave it. She was trying to manipulate the legal system using my name to secure representation she couldn't afford. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the money anymore. It wasn't about college or weddings or dogs. It was about principle, about truth, about finally standing up for myself and drawing a line that couldn't be erased with fake tears or family guilt. I went home. I opened my laptop and I started planning. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the call ended with Nicole's lawyer, I kept replaying it in my head. Her voice cool, professional, utterly unaware of the wrecking ball she just swung through my already fragile ties to that family. What struck me the most was how calculated it was. This wasn't a last-minute plea or emotional cry for help. Nicole had planned to use my name. She had handed it over to her lawyer as leverage, like it was just another resource in her endless list of fallback options. I paced around my apartment until dawn, the same questions circling over and over in my head like a wasp trapped in a jar. How many times was I going to let them do this to me? It wasn't just about money. It never was. It was about being used, overlooked, taken for granted. My whole life, I'd been the one quietly picking up the slack, walking the dog, when Nicole forgot fixing the Wi-Fi at 2 a.m., when she had a Zoom interview covering her coffee tab when she left her card at home. And every time I told myself it was just a phase that one day they'd see me differently, but they never did. That week broke something in me, but not in the way they probably expected. I didn't spiral. I didn't rage. I didn't even send a reply. Instead, I shut everything down. I paused freelance work for the first time in 2 years. I canceled my meetings. I ignored the emails still trickling in from my family like smoke from a fire that hadn't quite gone out. I went dark, and for about 3 weeks, I did nothing but exist. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, let dishes pile up, skipped showers, and pulled the blinds down like I was hiding from a storm. Because emotionally, I was. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to tell my friends why I looked like I hadn't slept in days or why I flinched when someone mentioned their parents. I had no one to talk to about it. Not really. My friends had good families, or at least ones that acted good ones that remembered birthdays and sent postcards and didn't use their college funds to pay for catered shrimp towers in the Greek islands. I hit my version of rock bottom one night at 2 a.m. sitting on the floor of my apartment half drunk on cold coffee and eating dry cereal from the box. I'd just gotten an automated email reminder that my loan payment was due soon. The same loans I never should have had. The ones that existed because my own parents bet against my future. And right then something inside me shifted. Not anger, not bitterness, resolve. I looked around my dim, messy apartment and thought, I'm done. Not with life with them. I was done giving them space in my head. Done letting their decisions define my self-worth. Done carrying the guilt of not being their ideal son. So I stood up. I cleaned the entire apartment from top to bottom that night, scrubbed the sink, vacuumed, did laundry, organized my files. When I finally collapsed into bed, it was almost sunrise. But for the first time in weeks, I slept, and when I woke up, I got to work. Not just work, but the work. The kind that changes your life when no one's watching. I started with the one thing I could control: my business. I reopened my freelance portal and redesigned my personal website. I rewrote every service description to sound sharper, bolder, more professional. I revamped my LinkedIn. I reached out to former clients with follow-ups asking for testimonials and referrals. I created a PDF services deck and started pitching small startups I admired. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 new clients. Then 5, I began tracking everything. Hours worked, profit margins, customer retention. I joined a few online forums and communities for freelance developers. Started posting tips, sharing experiences, giving advice. People noticed. My inbox started getting inquiries without me even having to pitch. One of my posts on a developer subreddit went mildly viral. Something about structuring your freelancing rates for long-term sustainability. That post landed me a connection with a small business incubator in Atlanta, and before I knew it, I was handling back-end work for 5 early-stage startups, one of which was quietly gaining traction in the fintech space. The funny thing, the more I worked, the more I remembered why I'd fallen in love with tech in the first place. It wasn't just about money. It was about building, about creating something that worked because I made it work. Unlike my family code made sense, inputs led to outputs, logic mattered. There were no passive-aggressive comments or shifting loyalties, just clean function and results. By month 3, I'd paid off one of my loans in full. By month 4, I'd saved enough to finally upgrade from the beat-up secondhand laptop that had gotten me through college. I bought a sleek new machine, fast, powerful mind. I kept my head down and built. No social media posts, no gloating, just quiet, momentum. I started journaling again too. Nothing fancy, just pen and paper each night before bed, tracking my progress, unloading my thoughts. One night, I wrote something that stuck with me. If they couldn't see my worth when I had nothing, they don't get to benefit from me now that I'm building everything. It became a mantra. I taped it above my desk. Months passed. I got healthier, not just mentally, but physically. I stopped eating like a stressed-out raccoon and started meal prepping. Nothing fancy, chicken, rice, broccoli, but consistent. I began jogging in the mornings. 10 minutes at first, then 20, then full runs along the river trail near my apartment. It helped clear my head, focused me. Around this time, I also reconnected with an old friend from college, Jared, who had started a small web dev company and was looking to bring someone in part-time. We grabbed coffee talk shop and clicked instantly. I took the role, and suddenly I had both a stable income and freelance clients on the side. Dual streams, more growth. Jared and I eventually partnered on a few projects that did well, one of which we ended up pitching to a local angel investor network. They didn't bite the first time, but one of the panelists remembered us. 3 months later, he reached out personally and asked if I'd be interested in helping with the back end on a new startup he was funding. And just like that, I was in. By the time I turned 23, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I'd built a full-time income, paid off most of my student debt, and launched a SaaS project with a modest but growing user base. I had my own LLC, a clean credit score, a small but respectable emergency fund. I wasn't rich, not yet. But I was free. Free from the narrative they'd written for me. Free from the idea that I was second tier, less than disposable. I'd built my own future, and that should have been the end of it. Should have been the happy ending, the look at me now, glow up, the full circle moment. But life has a funny way of circling back when you least expect it. Because just when I thought I was finally out of their orbit, Nicole came back again. But this time she didn't come with tears or lawyers. This time she came with receipts. And what she revealed, it changed everything. It started with a knock, not a phone call, not a text, an actual knock at my apartment door. 3 sharp raps just past 10 p.m. I was debugging a script when it happened, completely in the zone. So when the sound jolted me out of my focus, I instinctively glanced at my Nest feed first. The moment I saw the familiar outline, arms folded, head tilted slightly like she was already annoyed, I knew it was Nicole. For a second, I thought about pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity won out. I opened the door. She looked tired, not in a long day kind of way, but in that stretched thin makeup can't hide it way. Her hair was still sleek, but her eyes looked sunken, and the shine she always carried. The self-importance, the performative elegance was dulled. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there with a manila folder clutched tightly in her hands like she didn't trust herself to speak. "Ethan," she finally said, voice low. "I need to show you something. I didn't move. Last time, you showed me something. It involved lying to your lawyer and listing me as your financial sponsor." "I know," she said, looking down. "And I was wrong. That's not what this is." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the couch like she'd done 100 times before. But this time there was no air of entitlement, no smug smile, just exhaustion. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said, placing the folder on the coffee table. "I'm here because I found out something about Mom and Dad. Something I think you deserve to know." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." She opened the folder and pulled out a series of papers. Some were bank statements. Others looked like notarized letters. At the top of the stack was a printout from our parents' joint account. One I recognized because I used to deposit birthday checks into it when I was a teenager. Nicole handed it to me. "Do you remember the money Grandma left us?" I froze. Our grandmother Dad's mom had passed away when I was 14. A stern, non-nonsense woman who never had much to say, but always sent birthday cards with crisp bills tucked inside. She wasn't warm, exactly, but she was consistent, dependable. I remembered her funeral. I remember Dad getting oddly emotional, not just from grief, but something heavier, something more complicated. "She left us each a trust," Nicole continued. "Separate ones. Yours was $50,000. Mine was $50,000. The terms were the same, locked until age 18 to be used for education or housing." I blinked. "What I didn't know until last week," she said. "When I was going over some financial records with my divorce attorney, she found a weird transfer from my trust account to Mom and Dad's joint savings." I started digging. I stared at the document in my hand. There it was, plain as day. A withdrawal from a custodial account titled "In My Name," transferred directly into an account held by our parents. The date 3 weeks before Nicole's wedding. My stomach turned. "They used your inheritance," she said, almost whispering. "Not just your college fund. Your inheritance. They closed the trust early and liquidated it. That's not even legal," I muttered, flipping to the next page. "They falsified an educational waiver," she said. "Said it was going toward your college tuition. Then they rerouted it. The paper trail shaky, but my lawyer said with enough digging, it's provable." I sat back, letting the weight of it all crash over me. They hadn't just made a bad decision. They'd committed fraud against their own son, against me. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally asked. "Why now?" Nicole hesitated, then said something I never expected to hear from her. "Because I owe you. And because I think I finally understand what they did to you." She looked ashamed, not performatively, genuinely. "When Jason left, they didn't help," she said. "Not really. They offered a guest room and some tough love. That's it. I begged for help with legal fees. Mom said, 'Well, you chose that man.'" She gave a short, bitter laugh. "The same people who moved heaven and earth for my wedding wouldn't spare a dime for my divorce." "I thought I was the golden child," she continued. "Turns out I was just the useful one. The one they could parade around, the one who looked good on paper. And when I wasn't useful anymore," she trailed off. I didn't say anything, not out of spite, but because I needed to absorb this version of Nicole, this quieter, cracked version who finally saw the machine from the outside. I'd waited years for her to get it, for her to see me not as the bitter sibling with a chip on his shoulder, but as someone who'd been systematically sidelined, and now she did. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said after a moment, "but I figured if you wanted to do something about it, you deserve to have the tools." She stood up, left the folder on the table, and walked to the door. Just before she stepped out, she turned and said, "They underestimated you, Ethan. I did too. But I think they're about to learn what a mistake that was." She left, and that's when it hit me. I'd spent so long building my life away from them, distancing myself, proving I didn't need them, that I'd never once considered turning around and facing them head on. Not with resentment, not with yelling or Facebook posts or Thanksgiving speeches. With power, real, undeniable, legal, financial power. And now I had it. I spent the next 3 days diving into the folder, cross-referencing every document, highlighting key transfers, making copies and backups of backups. I uploaded everything to a secure drive and shared access with an attorney friend of mine, Monica, who had once helped me with a freelance contract dispute. She took one look at the trust records and said, "Oh yeah, this is a mess. You've got grounds." "Civil?" I asked. "Absolutely. And if you want to go nuclear, there's a fraud angle too. But that gets ugly." I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "I don't want to destroy them. I just want to take back what's mine." Monica nodded. "Then we'll do it by the book. No surprises." Over the next few weeks, I built my case. Quietly, strategically, Nicole provided more documents. Monica helped draft a formal demand letter. We uncovered other misuses of funds, small ones maybe, but enough to show a pattern. There were even irregularities with Nicole's own trust, suggesting mom and dad had dipped into hers before she turned 18 as well. I began tracking my loan payments, every cent I'd taken out because of their lie. Every interest fee I'd paid every month I'd spent working overtime to patch the hole. They'd left all of it documented. And then while scanning old email backups, I found something I'd long forgotten. An email from Dad sent when I was 17. The subject was scholarship forms. In it, he told me not to apply for certain aid programs because it'll mess with the trust fund payout. We don't want to complicate things. I remembered being confused at the time. Now I knew why. They were never planning to use that money for me. They were buying time to reroute it. That email became the final piece of the puzzle. By month's end, we had a file thick enough to fill a legal briefcase. But I didn't go to court. Not yet. Instead, I waited because a better opportunity was coming. One they couldn't squirm out of. One where the spotlight would be on them and where for the first time they'd be powerless to hide. You see, my parents had built their reputation in our community on being pillars of support. Dad sat on the board of a local business mentorship group. Mom was treasurer of the neighborhood association. They held fundraisers, threw garden parties, took pictures with plaques, and next month they were being honored at a local gala for outstanding family contributions. The irony nearly knocked me off my chair. IRSVPD anonymously. Then I started preparing for the main event. Not a scene, not a tantrum, just the truth. Neatly packaged, legally backed, and strategically timed. They taught me everything I needed to know about appearances. Now I was going to show them what happened when the curtain fell. And this time, I wasn't backing down. The night of the gala arrived like a thunderstorm disguised in sunshine. It was one of those early summer evenings that started warm and easy, but held a charge beneath it like something was waiting to break. I wore a navy blue blazer, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I knew how my parents would read it. Success, stability, professionalism. I wanted to look like the son they never thought I'd become. The one they pushed aside, the one they bet against. The event was hosted at a country club just outside the city. A sprawling, manicured place with white columns and a chandelier in the lobby that looked like it cost more than my apartment. I arrived early and took my seat at one of the rear tables, positioned perfectly to observe but remained unnoticed for now. The evening opened with a cocktail hour full of fake laughter and 2 tight handshakes. I spotted my parents near the center of it all, dressed to the nines. Dad in a gray tailored suit, Mom in a crimson dress that shimmered under the lights. They looked every bit the respected community couple. Smiling, toasting, posing for pictures with a backdrop that read, "Honoring those who give back." Nicole wasn't there. We'd agreed on that. She didn't want to be seen, not yet, but she'd helped me prepare every piece of what was coming. After an hour, the guests were ushered into the banquet hall. Round tables, polished silverware, white tablecloths, floral centerpieces. It was elegant, tasteful, and hollow. A few speakers took the stage, some award for local entrepreneurs, another for a charity initiative. Then came the main segment, the one labeled on the program as the Legacy Award celebrating a lifetime of community dedication. That's when they introduced my parents. There was a short video montage pictures of them over the years, volunteering, mentoring, smiling beside ribbon cutings and award plaques. The narrator praised them for their financial generosity, for setting an example of family leadership and selflessness. I couldn't help but scoff. Then they walked on stage to a round of polite applause. Mom beamed. Dad gave his trademark modest wave. They looked like royalty, untouchable, until the envelope arrived. The MC handed Dad the mic and stepped back. My father cleared his throat and began with a joke. Something about being more comfortable in a workshop than on a stage. The crowd chuckled, and then right on cue, one of the event staff walked up the stairs. She was young, maybe early 20s, dressed in black slacks and a white collared shirt. She held a cream-colored envelope with both hands and whispered something to the MC. I watched as confusion flickered across his face. Then a pause. Then he leaned into the mic and said, "Apologies for the interruption, folks. We've just received a document related to tonight's honorees. It appears to be from their son." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. My father's smile twitched. My mother blinked hard. I stood up from my table and made my way toward the stage. Slowly, calmly. People turned to look. Whispers followed me like a shadow. The MC hesitated, unsure what to do, but I gave him a nod as I stepped beside him. "May I?" He handed me the mic. I turned to face the crowd, and for a moment I saw them. Not just my parents, but the entire room. Donors, executives, neighbors, friends, all people who'd been fed the same narrative for years. The benevolent couple, the generous parents, the pillars of the community. I took a breath. "My name is Ethan," I said. "Some of you know me, most of you probably don't. I'm the son of tonight's honoress." I looked at my parents. Mom's lips were tight. Dad's jaw was clenched. "And I'm here because I believe the truth matters." I held up the envelope, then carefully pulled out a set of documents and passed copies to the MC. Inside these pages, you'll find proof that the people being celebrated tonight used their son's college fund and inheritance not to support his education, but to fund a wedding in Santorini and a luxury vacation package. A wave of gasps swept the room. They falsified documents, I continued, voice steady, claimed the money was being used for tuition so they could withdraw it early, then rerouted it into a personal account and spent it. When I confronted them, I was told I wasn't Harvard material and to take out loans instead. More murmurs, chairs shifting. I did take out those loans. I worked 3 jobs to survive college. I built my career from scratch while they continued posting beach photos with hashtags like #blessed. I paused. They did this while being praised for their generosity, while holding up a public image that doesn't match the private damage they've caused. I turned back to the crowd, and I'm not here for vengeance. I'm here for honesty, because I think if we're going to honor people for being selfless and moral, we should know who they really are. I handed the mic back to the stunned MC, turned, and walked off the stage. Behind me, the silence cracked into a storm. People were whispering, pointing, exchanging glances. My parents remained frozen in place. I didn't stick around. I walked straight out of the banquet hall and into the warm night air where Nicole was waiting in a car parked across the street. She rolled down the window and gave me a look. "You did it." I nodded. "They can't spin it now. Not with those documents." She looked down. "They're going to hate us." "Probably," I said. "But they already chose their version of us a long time ago." She unlocked the door. "Want a ride?" I slid into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead. 2 days later, news of the gala incident made the local business journal. Not front page, but big enough. The community board released a polite statement about reassessing the criteria for honorees. Dad was quietly removed from the mentorship group. Mom stepped down as treasurer to focus on personal matters. The fallout was clean. No police, no lawsuits, but their names tarnished. Their reputation shaken. Their ability to pretend gone. They tried to call me once after that, just once. I didn't answer. They left a voicemail that started with, "Ethan, we need to talk," and ended with, "This is a misunderstanding," but I deleted it before it finished. Nicole kept her distance too. She moved to a new apartment, got a job working part-time for a nonprofit, and started seeing a therapist. We weren't best friends overnight, but the air between us was different now, lighter, more honest. I never got the money back, but I got something better. I got closure. And I got to look in the mirror every morning knowing I didn't just survive them. I outgrew them. In the end, the boy they wrote off as not Harvard material became the man who rewrote their legacy, and I did it without their permission. They tried to bury me, but they didn't realize I was the foundation.